Welcome to our second session on gap coaching and mentoring. This is the coach approach, and we're actually looking at quite a number of different things as we go through the weeks. But this is week number 2. This is session number 2. And the next session that we're looking at today is what are the next steps? Steps are actually very, very important to what we do. And this is a bit of a practical session as much as it is some teaching and learning as well. So get your pen and paper out or type away or whatever else you might need to be doing through this. And of course, your worksheets will be available as well for you to fill out and work with as notes and so forth. But the next steps, what are the next steps? What are the next steps in life? What are the next steps in all the things that we do ahead of us for our lives, as in our personal life, as in our relationships with spouses and so forth and so on. And then, of course, what are the next steps in our business? What are the next steps we need to be taking in business as well? And all of these principles apply to both. There are ideas, there are goals, and of course there is accountability. First of all, let me just talk about ideas. There are ideas that we need to put in place in our personal lives, ideas that we need to have, that we need to put up as things that are valid for us, ideas for our marriage, ideas for our relationship with friends, ideas, of course, in relation to business, ideas and concepts that need to be gone through. They need to be actually explored. And as we explore those ideas for various aspects of our world, then we actually do need to do something about that. We need to actually write down the goals. And let me just say, first of all, please have big ideas. Please don't sit back and think, oh, well, let someone else have the big ideas, or someone else has already come up with all the big ideas. It's interesting, back in about 1918 or thereabouts, they were going to close the patents office down because they said that all the major ideas, the big ideas, had actually already been done. Imagine if they'd done that in 1918. Here we are just over 100 years later, and look at the amount of inventions and things. The fact that you're watching what you're watching right now would never actually have taken place if they'd just shut down the patent office and said, no more new good ideas. No, please have big ideas. Absolutely must have big ideas. But the second thing we must do is to have those goals and write them down and plan them. Please plan your ideas out. In other words, it's no good just having the ideas. Their ideas are wonderful. I think ideas are great. I've always been a person that loves having new concepts, having new ideas, loves trying out new things. I guess I've been always that sort of person. But the reality is this, that when you plan your ideas out, it actually becomes so much better for you when you actually plan them and you write them down. We'll talk more about this in goals and dreams and visions and so forth. But the reality is this, that you can have all the goals in the world. You can have all the dreams in the world. But if you don't write them down, if you don't have a plan as to how to go about them, things aren't going to happen. And then thirdly, in terms of what the next steps are as far as your life and as far as things are concerned here, because we've already looked at the whys of life, now we're looking at what's the next step after the why. In other words, you've got a why. You know why you're here on earth. Hopefully you've already taken some time and written that down and been purposeful about what your purpose is. Now have the big ideas. Please plan your ideas out. And then thirdly, and very, very importantly, be accountable to someone. Be accountable to someone who's actually going to help you look after your life. Take steps. These are the steps we need to do. It's amazing, how often we try to run and jump before we can even crawl. These are the steps that we need to be doing. We mentioned 3 of those things before, being accountable and so forth and so on. But in taking steps, because we do need to take steps as we go forward, oftentimes we try to run so fast. We try to jump over, puddles maybe that are just a little bit too big for us. And so the fact is we actually need to learn to crawl and then to walk and then to run. So here's the thing. In your life, maybe you've tried to run a little bit too much. Much more than perhaps you have before. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to actually stop. I want you to think about the things that you need to plan out and that you need to actually be accountable and who you need to be accountable to, and then take steps. Take steps with those people, including those people and so forth and so on. Then what we want you to do in terms of goals, we want you to start setting micro goals. In other words, small goals, mini goals, if you will. And of course, those goals must be SMART goals. You've heard of the SMART goal concept. It's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and then time or time oriented. Those SMART goals, though, don't necessarily have to be the big audacious, the big, you know what they call them, the big audacious goals, the bad goals or whatever they are, the big goals like that. They can be smaller goals and done in increments. Again, taking steps. Those steps, are very, very important. There's actually a scriptural verse that says this: the steps of a good man are ordered by God. In other words, the steps, not the leaps, not the trying to jump puddles, not all that kind of stuff. The steps of a good man are ordered, and they're ordered by God, but they're also ordered by us as well. We need to be in some sort of order as far as those goals are concerned. And those micro goals, or those smaller goals, we set them with measurable goals. We set them smaller. For example, if you wanted to save up $20,000, let's use that as an example. You're saving up to $20,000, but in increments, it needs to be looking at, okay, so every week, what I'll do is I'll put aside $100 out of my pay. And so you put down that $100, and then you start to look at that. Okay, so over a year, what's that $100 going to add up to? Well, it's $5,200, $5,200. So if we're looking to save up $20,000, that means that roughly 4 years, or just short of 4 years, you will actually have $20,000. So you might think to yourself, okay, so that's breaking it down into those smaller goals. But now, can I do it differently and still have smaller goals, but can I set it up differently? But you see, in setting up the smaller goals, they're measurable, they're attainable. Now, I know money is an easy one, and there are other ways and other things that we can look at as well as far as that goes. But just be aware to set some of those smaller goals, and step by step, do this with an accountability partner, someone who actually can work with you on this. Sometimes you might need someone who's a professional, someone you need like ourselves as a coach, a mentor, helping you, develop the things you need to do. As far as that goes, whatever the case may be, we are here for you, obviously. But those people that are accountability partners, whether they be someone in your family, relationship, all those kinds of things can be there. Sometimes family can be a little bit more awkward, but at the same time, families still need to be in on what's going on in your world, particularly if it's husband and wife and so forth and so on. Don't let fear of failing. Let me just finish this lesson off here with something that's really, really important. Don't let fear of failing get in the way of what's ahead of you. You need to be taking steps, but the fact is that we will not take steps oftentimes because we've failed in the past. I've done this. I've never done that. I've done this wrongly all the time, all my life. I keep making the same mistakes. All the things that we say, and failure fears are in fact a gap blocker. They will block you from bridging the gap. And so we talk about that at Gap Coaching here, about gap blockers and gap bridges. And failure fears are definitely something that blocks your way. It's like a wall that we put up, and it stops us from taking any kind of steps. It's like when we first take that first step. It's like a little baby is they don't realize, I suppose, the fullness of it. But they try to take that first step, and it's quite daunting for them to try and even do it. I've seen plenty of movies where they've had the guy who's been in the wheelchair and they finally get out and they take that first kind of stumbling step and everything else. And in some cases I've seen it where oh no, I can't do it, and they slump back into a wheelchair or what it is. And the reason for that is because there's a fear that they're going to fail. So what we need to do is we need to take the steps out of our wheelchairs, so to speak, and not allow failure to stop us. Identify your negative patterns in all of this. Identify how negatively you can actually be living your life. In other words, there'll be things that you might be doing and saying and have said and done all your life that have actually stopped you from and limited you from actually going forward. It's held you back from who you're meant to be. So here's what I want to say to you is identify those things. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with us. Maybe have a chat to us about this as well. But identify your negative patterns. Identify the negative things that are actually stopping you from being the very best person that you can possibly be. And so I want to say to you today, it's time to step up. And it's time not to hold back. It's time to actually be the best possible person that you can be and take steps forward to be the man, the woman that you're meant to be. And we're here to help you do all of that. So that ends session number 2. Your worksheets will be there available for you. You'll be able to write down some things on pen and paper. Might be a good idea sometimes just to print those out. Be sure, though, remember when we talked about this in the intro video, be sure to be present, be sure to be not distracted, be sure to be with us in all of this, and actually really concentrate on what you're learning here and get these each week and change. As we show you some things to change, begin to make those changes. Take action every time we talk about things that are going to do that. And don't let failure get in the way, and don't let it be a gap blocker in the way of you stepping out, taking the steps towards your dreams, the things that you want to be in life, and be accountable to someone as well. Well, that's us signing off from Bridging the Gap and Gap Coaching today on this session on what steps next.